Now, quality is, of course, completely subjective, but it is easy to argue that these movies right here that we're about to talk about have all enjoyed a whole new lease of life more recently. Perhaps another entry into the franchise retroactively made them feel more relevant. They benefited from an unexpected parallel with real life, or they managed to remain maddeningly prophetic far beyond anyone's expectations. Whatever the reason, it truly does feel like each of these movies got better years after they came out. So with that in mind, I am Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are 10 movies that got better years later.
Want to stay safe online and save big? Get up to 76% off a 2-year NordVPN plan, plus 4 months free and up to a $50 Amazon gift card. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description and it's all yours.
Number 10, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Though the release reception to Rogue One, A Star Wars Story was relatively solid, it was far from universally loved, with many feeling that it was ultimately pretty thin in the character development department, and a 2-hour canvas simply was not enough to deliver a fully satisfying lead-in to Episode 4, A New Hope. But it is difficult not to view Rogue One in something of a different light today with the recent conclusion of the brilliant Disney Plus series Andor, whose 2-season story arc leads directly into Rogue One. Across these 2 seasons, Andor significantly fleshes out the morally complex plight of the rebellion, and especially deepens the character of Cassian, played by Diego Luna. Even enough that Rogue One's real protagonist, Jyn Erso, seems rather one-note by comparison. Andor also makes characters like Saw Gerrera and Orson Krennic considerably more interesting, and expands the world building of Star Wars as a whole in a rich and meaningful way. As a result, the journey from Andor to Rogue One to A New Hope ends up feeling like one of the strongest arcs in the entire franchise to date. And considering how many rolled their eyes when Andor was first announced back in the day, convinced that it'd be yet another piece of disposable content in the Star Wars sausage factory, what an outcome this turned out to be. I mean, seriously, if you have not watched Andor yet, what are you doing with your life? Just watch it immediately. Like, right after you've watched this video, of course. Oh yeah, and then when you're done doing that, maybe go and check out What Culture Star Wars as well, because there's a pretty egg that talks about Star Wars a lot and wears Star Wars t-shirts. Yeah. Number 9, Contagion. Steven Soderbergh's Contagion was always a brilliantly chilling, unsentimental thriller about a world-ravaging pandemic. But up until 2020, we, as viewers, had a certain healthy, comfortable distance from it. And it was something we simply could not imagine actually, living through. And while the COVID-19 pandemic was ultimately nowhere near as severe as the one depicted in Contagion, which had a mortality rate of 25 to 30% compared to COVID's 2 to 3%, it nevertheless made rewatching Contagion a wholly more haunting and relatable experience. Ultimately, so much of Scott Z. Burns' impeccably well-researched script turned out to be true, especially the state of global panic a pandemic would cause, and the conspiracy theory grifters who swiftly emerged from the woodwork. When Contagion came out, some reviews felt that Jude Law's conspiracy theorist character was a bit too outlandish. Yet in light of everything we've seen for ourselves in the actual pandemic, that hardly seems the case now, does it? Now, Contagion probably isn't a film you'll watch for comfort, but loaded with the first-hand knowledge we all now have of a real-life pandemic, it's even more bracingly effective. I watched it again recently, actually, and yeah, it does hit different. Number 8, Falling Down. Joel Schumacher's 1993 thriller Falling Down is a fascinating, at times darkly comedic film about a supposedly everyday man called William Foster, who snaps on an especially hot day in Los Angeles and embarks on a violent rampage while trying to reach his family. You know what, it's actually very hot today, but don't worry, I shall not be snapping. I will not be snapping. Hopefully. Schumacher's film has always been praised for its script and the performances of Michael Douglas and Robert Duvall in particular, though some consider the film dated today due to its central character's blatant racism, and the perception that many of his vigilante actions are depicted quasi-heroically, or at least humorously. Yet the discomfort of watching Falling Down in 2025 is precisely what makes it such an interesting, surprisingly well-aged film. While Foster absolutely has some legitimate gripes with society which make him sympathetic to a point, the whole false advertising and fast food debacle for one, he's also an emotionally stunted, mediocre white man who is clearly struggling to accept his own diminishing relevance in modern society. It's easy to see Foster as an analogue for the domestic terrorists and incels who routinely make headlines today, ensuring that Falling Down feels more stingingly relevant than ever. And on the subject of movies aging quite well, what movie do you feel has aged really well? Well, let me know in the comments down below. Number 7, Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me. Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me has been a polarizing movie ever since it released in 1992, with even die-hard David Lynch fans battling over its perceived merits. Some found this prequel to the TV show excessively bleak, while also refusing to provide the answers they might have expected to get, while others have always flown the flag for it as a devastating prescript to Lynch's series, topped by a magnificent performance from Cheryl Lee. No matter where you come down on it though, Fire Walk with Me became a very different viewing experience in light of 2017's belated third season of Twin Peaks: The Return. As surprised many, the events of Fire Walk with Me were explicitly referenced during The Return and made to feel like a major part of the series' mythology, in turn only enhancing the deep well of sadness at its core. If once upon a time it was easy to nudge Fire Walk with Me into a corner and just treat it like added value for only the most hardcore Twin Peaks fans, The Return made it feel positively vital, and all the better for it, really. Number 6, Office Space. Though Mike Judge's workplace satire, Office Space, was a box office flop upon release, it quickly became a word-of-mouth hit in the years that followed, and more than 25 years later, it remains one of the most distinctive cult comedies of the 90s. And while one might have assumed that the film's relevance would decrease in a post-pandemic world where remote work policies are commonplace globally, well, you know what, that's not actually quite the case. For starters, Office Space wasn't just a comedy for white-collar office workers. It operated as a broader satire of the absurdity of work itself. Now, we give so much of our free time to an employer in order to simply exist. But even accepting the prevalence of work-from-home initiatives today, Office Space's sentiments about the soulless drudgery of office life feel more timely than ever in an era where many companies around the world are attempting to force employees to return to the office, even if their jobs can be done just as efficiently from home. And so, even as the world has changed in a ton of rather unexpected ways, I mean, just look at me doing this job right now in my spare room, that would not have been imaginable a couple of years ago, Judge's film still feels as firmly, hilariously on the pulse as it did over a quarter century ago. If you, right there, are having a good time looking at these movies that have gotten better years later, then I know what you should do. Yep, listen, getting close. Tap the subscribe button, because guess what's going to happen? You're going to get even more of these fantastic videos. So yeah, why not? Number 5, Spectre. Spectre released in 2015 to rather underwhelming reviews, many feeling that it was a disappointing follow-up to Skyfall, suffering from a needlessly convoluted narrative while failing to make the most of legacy villain Ernst Stavro Blofeld. I mean, I do remember being a bit let down walking out of the cinema that day. That was a sad day. And while follow-up No Time to Die could have quite easily left Spectre in its rearview mirror and just moved forward with another standalone story, it actually did the trickier, bolder thing and went about smoothing over Spectre's rough edges. First and foremost, No Time to Die massively deepens the rather rushed relationship between 007 and Madeline Swan from Spectre, paying it off in an unexpectedly emotional manner by way of their child, Mathilde, and Bond's ultimate sacrifice to save them both. If you didn't know that already, I'm sorry, it's been a while. Elsewhere, it also does a much better job with Blofeld, who, while only appearing in a supporting capacity, casts a far more menacing and unsettling presence, carrying his beef with Bond to a satisfying conclusion. Make no mistake, Spectre is still a low point for the Craig era, but No Time to Die made it matter a bit more, and feel like a genuinely consequential entry into this run of Bond movies. And what more could you ask for than that? Number 4, Freddy Gotfingered. When it released in 2001, Tom Green's surreal black comedy Freddy Gotfingered was near universally panned by critics, some of whom called it the worst film they had ever seen, before it went on to win 5 Razzie Awards, including Worst Picture. it cleaned up in the worst way. Yet even on original release, there were precious few who saw something. Critic Roger Ebert, who panned the film, nevertheless had an inkling that it might be re-evaluated someday, semi-jokingly saying, "The day may come when Freddy Got Fingered is seen as a milestone of neo-surrealism." And while Freddy Got Fingered is still highly contested today, it has enjoyed something of a wider appreciation in more recent years, as the art of anti-comedy has become decidedly more popular in the mainstream. The film's defenders argue that its relentless vulgarity is itself an act of absurdist rebellion, and that Green is basically mocking the very fact that a studio gave him $14 million to make it in the first place. That is a lot of money. At the time of its release, Freddy Got Fingered was so far away from the glossy, big-budget comedies critics and audiences expected to see. But as comedy itself has changed over the decades, Green's film has morphed into a beguiling curiosity, even if many might understandably still detest it. Number 3, Network. Sidney Lumet's Oscar-winning 1976 masterpiece, Network, is quite arguably one of the greatest films of all time. A deliciously clever and prophetic satire which foresaw the trend of news transforming into entertainment, and lampooned media corporations' tireless pursuit of ratings at whatever cost. Network has remained impressively relevant for almost an entire half-century, no matter that the world has been reshaped by the internet in the interim. The news delivery system itself may have changed, but Network's themes about messaging, power, and groupthink have only become more insidious in the era of social media. Network's savage depiction of outrage content feels more topical than ever at a time where algorithms reward negativity and vocal ire over positivity and grounded, considered analysis. I mean, X is quite the place right now, isn't it? And of course, there's the fact that social media has made the reliability of information so terrifyingly muddy, something Network itself explores through the lens of linear TV. The more that media itself shape-shifts and develops more nefarious ways to manipulate viewers, Network is only likely to feel even more ahead of its time. Number 2, Jennifer's Body. When the Diablo Cody penned horror comedy Jennifer's Body was first released in 2009, it received predominantly mixed reviews, with many dismissing it as a shallow, trashy romp, soon to be forgotten. But the Megan Fox starring film just refused to go away, and ended up enjoying something of a major re-evaluation in the years since its release, with authors praising the film for its distinctly queer, feminist themes, given the relationship between Fox and Amanda Seyfried's characters, and also that Jennifer spends most of the movie violently lashing out against violent, abusive men. Now, of course, Jennifer's Body has always been about these things since day one, but the film ultimately had to wait for the world to mature a little bit, to pay closer attention and catch up to what it was saying all along, a process galvanized in the wake of 2017's Me Too movement. Given that it came and went without much fuss upon original release, it is quite fascinating to observe the second life it's had in more recent years, particularly as it pertains to the recontextualization of Fox's career during the late 2000s. And number 1, American Graffiti. And finally, we have 1973's American Graffiti, the second film helmed by George Lucas and his only self-directed project that was not a sci-fi movie. There you go, there's some trivia for you. Rather, American Graffiti is a coming-of-age comedy set in 1960s California, focusing on a group of teenagers and their shenanigans over the course of a single night. There's a lot of cars as well, yeah. Though extremely well received at the time of its release, even landing Lucas the first of 2 Best Director Oscar nominations, there is an argument to be made that American Graffiti has only become an even better movie with age. In a 2022 review of the film, none other than Quentin Tarantino himself very persuasively argued that, like many movies rooted in nostalgia for a bygone era, Lucasfilm has actually only gotten better as more time has passed from its 1973 release. So basically, with each passing year, the era it depicts feels even more dreamlike and unknowable to most of the people watching. Namely, those who weren't alive in the 1960s, who, on a long enough timeline, will eventually be, well, everyone. Yeah. So on that lovely note, it is time to end this video. But continue your YouTube journey by tapping on another one of the What Culture videos that we have and have made. Click it now. Click it real good. See you later.